All right, so really utilization management reporting is going to start with configuration. Some of you may be really familiar with this, some maybe not, but we'll just kind of talk through some of the finer points of configuration so that you will be able to run reports. You'll be able to see this information. The folks that need to be able to see this info can see it. So we're talking about first configure security, configure roles. Typically, really the topic we're talking about today, folks that would need this type of access would be security admins or billers. Anybody who has some role in utilization, in in billing, those are the folks that would need access within configure. So if we just take a look at the security admin role, couple of things here, just under notes. We're really primarily talking about the reports that are available. And really the big ones here are the service variants, the unformatted, and the utilization reports. So those are the first ones that we come to under the notes desktop. The next would be under authorizations, which consequently are the exact same reports. It's just a different way of accessing those. So variants, unformatted, utilization. We add one more report that is super useful. I'm going to go through that report in today's session. That's the auth versus scheduled report. And then finally, we're going to give you a third area in which to access the report. Again, you see the variance, the unformatted, utilization, and the auth versus scheduled report. So you can open those up in all three areas for a particular role, or you can open it in one or two. We do that really to allow you to customize, right? So if somebody is primarily in scheduling, checking scheduling validations, then maybe you just need to open that up under scheduling for them. If somebody is truly managing auth entry, utilization, checking these reports, you probably want to open that up under authorizations. So that's just real quick around the configuration piece, where you would open the reports we're going to run and talk about today. And then finally, something else that's very, very important in terms of role configuration and how it interacts with the reporting piece and unit maximums, all that good stuff is validations. The biggie here would be the authorization min-max. So again, this is role specific. We're under the validations tab. And we're talking about this authorizations min-max. And if you're not familiar with these columns and kind of what they do, if you're brand new to OnTarget, enforce means to enforce the rule. So the system would be looking at the unit maximums that you put into an auth, and it would be enforcing that rule. And then the second checkbox would be for the individual in that role, if they're a scheduler, if, again, it's a note writer, maybe a DSP, then can they or can they not override that warning that would be thrown? So those things are very much interconnected when we're talking about utilization, when we're talking about the system doing those checks and balances, and then allowing or disallowing signing of notes and scheduling and all that good stuff. So that's just a crash course around the configuration piece. Any questions before we keep moving along and go to, we're going to jump into authorizations, just take a quick look there. And then we're going to spend some time on the actual reports and validations. But any questions before we move on? All right, guys, if not, we'll go ahead and continue on. So authorizations, this is really kind of where it starts in terms of getting the data plugged in. As you know, if you've been using OnTarget for any amount of time, authorizations are crucial to the use of the system, whether it comes to scheduling or notes or billing, everything. And OnTarget really ties back to service authorizations. So again, we're going to talk about these reports that you see up here, the variance, unformatted, utilization, and auth versus schedule report. But it really starts with the auth entry and the utilization and the maximums that you've entered in here. And so to give a visual here, I've got a view saved. So a lot of you are probably familiar with views, but that's where you can kind of save a snapshot of your filter. So we're going to take a look at Johnny Cool's authorizations. The first that I want to do, let me just take a look at the day support. It's a very common service, the DS Individual T2021. So you can see here, this is a good example where unit maximums or max units have been plugged in. So we've got weekly, again, this is an hourly based service for day support individual. So this would basically be 20 hours per week. And then this would be our authorization total for the entire authorization period, 1/1 to 12/31. Just a couple of quick tips here. You also have day, you also have month. I would suggest too that you plug either week or month, but typically not both. You can run into some issues with the variance reporting if you try to plug both in, and typically authorizations are going to be provided from the oversight entity, from the MCO, based on either a weekly maximum or a monthly maximum. Year, I don't see that used very often. That is actually the calendar year. So typically you're looking at the total. At a minimum, you want to get that total plugged in. What am I authorized for the entire year? Day and week work fine together. So again, if you want to capitate or have sort of the threshold, the maximum, maybe that's 48 units for a periodic service under day, and then you could have your weekly total. So those are the basics. Just when you have a one-to-one authorization, one service, one authorization, this is a very common look for something like that. I do want to kind of just go very quickly. I'm going to plug in an authorization here because I want to show you what the service variance report looks like when you have multiple services plugged up under a single authorization. We like to think of this as off-level validation, or sort of calling it like bundled services. You see this a lot in mental health with a lot of the 908 codes, where you've got multiple services that are bundled together. We also see this in IDD, in the IDD space with the T2013 and T2012. So maybe you have a relativist provider providing services alongside somebody who is clocking in and clocking out against a T2013. So let me go ahead and just plug in an auth just so you get an idea. If you haven't set up an authorization like this before, I'm going to show you kind of what an authorization level validation looks like. So again, we're just going to say jcool, and I'm just going to call this auth level validation. You can call that whatever you want, whatever your naming convention is. We're going to find Johnny Cool. Let's say that Johnny's was VIA. This is approved. And again, let's just start this. Let's see. 2025. And then let's run this through an entire year. And so maybe the first service is the CLS individual T2013. All right. And so auth level validation is where you have multiple services falling up under a single auth. And this is going to make a little more sense if you've never seen this before. But you're basically saying, okay, I have one big bucket of units, And regardless of the service that is being utilized, we're pulling from that same bucket of units, right? Just kind of get that visual. So for instance, we would maybe want to still max this out at 48 daily units or 12 hours. And then maybe our max total for the entire year would go right here. And that might be something like 7,280, right? Again, this is 14-minute units that we're taking a look at. Funding source, again, that's going to be VIA. And then location, let's just say other, that could be home. And so then we're going to go ahead and save that. And let's see, we got overlapping service. Let's see, I guess we already have that. Oh, my date was wrong here, guys. Sorry about that. All right, I am going to, just for the sake of being able to get this plugged in, let me change my dates here. And this should push this way out where we're not overlapping. There we go, success. All right, so again, off-level validation is going to treat this multiple services as kind of one pulling from a single bucket. So oftentimes we'll see something like the CLS relative provider or RADC, some folks call it, and that's falling up under the same thing, right? So this is kind of what that looks like, guys. It looks like two services, but we are validating at the authorization level. So again, I could have a provider that's providing services to my child using the T2013 service, and I, as the relatives provider, I'm doing the T2012. And regardless of what day, what time, it's all going to be pulling from and validating against that big bucket of units of 7,280. And you can still have a weekly, so maybe you still want to, validate this and kind of max this out individually at the service level. This is kind of a good hedge. This is a good way to kind of keep things in order. So just to give you guys an example, this is a very common configuration and setup for services like this. All right, any questions, guys, before we use the last bit of time? We've got about probably 10 minutes, maybe a little more, just to run through these reports. Any questions? All right, guys, if not, we're going to go ahead and just keep moving. So these reports, the variance, the unformatted, the utilization report, I really think of them as showing you all of the different buckets of where the units are at any given time within the system, within OnTarget. It's a great tool for you to be able to troubleshoot, to be able to see how many units are remaining. Hey, have we overutilized somewhere in terms of off versus scheduled? Are we underutilizing? Okay, maybe we're leaving some units on the table, and hence we're leaving money on the table, right? So really the buckets are the authorized units total. If you're using schedules, it's looking at the bucket of scheduled units, notes, time records, batched, and then ultimately the build and the remaining. So let's take a look at this. Let's look at the service variance first. So the service variance report. So you click on that, and let's just look at Johnny Cool, and we're going to plug in a U for unexpired. We only want to see the unexpired. And then I'm going to put in the time period here for all of these current authorizations. And then let's go ahead and run this report. So this is what I mean by these buckets. If you haven't really gotten familiar with these reports, we're talking about, here's the authorized total. Here's the schedule. This report's really nice because it shows the missed. So if you're using missed shifts and you're actually marking scheduled events as missed, then those units would show up here. So that's another great reporting tool. We can see the notes bucket, and again, it's showing you the line item per the service. So we have 20 units currently sitting in notes under the day support individual. We've got 15 sitting in time records. We don't currently have any sitting in batch. And that all totals up from scheduling to notes to time records to 177. We have 8 build units, meaning that we have 8 units that are associated with claims. So they've got a claim number associated, and then we're simply subtracting this from our total over here, our authorized units, and we're getting what's remaining. So here we can see, look, this is another great tool where you can see, look, we're dipping into the negative. Like we are overutilized. Anywhere you're seeing, in this particular case is because we have not plugged in a number, right? You're gonna see a negative if you don't have authorized maximums plugged in. But if you see a negative here and you do have an authorized unit total maximum amount, then you got a problem. This is a great tool for troubleshooting that kind of thing. Let's see, authorized and scheduled. Again, you can see the 0 units with negative balances. That's a great way. This is a great way to kind of scan through and say, look, what have we missed? Maybe we've forgotten to plug in unit maximum somewhere, right? You can export this. You can take this to Excel. You can do a little bit more filtering. The unformatted report, I will very briefly touch on that. That is a great way of taking it to Excel and doing a little more data manipulation. Let's take another look. Let's just look at Johnny Cool unexpired, and then let's just drill down to a little bit of troubleshooting here. This is another great report, the service variance report. We're often kind of asked, like, why would I want to use the variance versus utilization? The variance report is what we consider a calculated report. It's very, very good for the multiple service, the authorization level reporting, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of what that report looks like. And it's also great when you're trying to look at a slice, when you're trying to look at like a week at a time. It's an excellent report for doing that. So for instance, if I wanted to validate 11/17 to 11/21, I just want to look at a time slice of this week, okay? I know I've got some schedules hanging out there for this service. I'm going to look at for Johnny Cool, and I'm going to go ahead and run this report for day support. Okay, so what this is showing me is I am overutilized. Okay, I've got 8 build units. I've got a total of 30 units here. Obviously, I've got 30 sitting in schedules, but I'm only authorized for 20. So I'm already 18. I'm already showing in the negative, right? I'm 18 in the hole. So this is what you can go to, right? And you can just kind of see right away, oh my gosh, we're overutilized. So you can do a lot to kind of prevent this on the front end. You can, use those off min-max validations and set those at the ground level for your DSPs. So there's a lot of ways that you can prevent this before it even gets to this level. But this is a great tool, again, for saying, look, where are we having problems? Why are we getting validations? So to kind of piggyback on this, if I actually hop over to scheduling and I plug in kind of the same information here, if I say, look, client Johnny Cool, and I want to look at, again, at that T 2021 service, and I'm going to go ahead and search. So that's where I've got that scheduled, right? I've got essentially 30 hours scheduled, but again, I only had 20 that I'm authorized for. Here's another awesome tool. I don't know if you guys have used this or how frequently you've taken a look at this, but we actually have a validation tool. So if you actually plug in your information, let's say maybe you've taken a look at the variance report, you've seen, wait a minute, there's a problem. Maybe you've gotten a staff say, hey, I can't sign my note. I keep getting this message and it says you've exceeded units. Okay. So if you've ever wondered, like, how do I dig into the details? How do I actually kind of troubleshoot this, right? Use those variance reports, and then you can actually validate here on demand. So if you plug in a couple of filters here, right, and then you actually click validate, and then if I know my time period where I'm having a problem, again, maybe that's, for this week, for 11/17, and we're just going to go Monday through Friday to 11/21, and I run that validation, I can see automatically, here's my problem, right? It's showing me exactly what I saw back at the variance report, that I'm overutilized. Okay. So these things are kind of working together, right? Just kind of showing you how it's interconnected, how they all kind of work together. I do want to very quickly also show you, so the service variance report at the authorization level. This is what you can expect when you run that report and you have multiple services. Remember, we had the example of the relativist provider, the T2012 and the T2013 service falling up under a single auth. Again, an excellent report for breaking it out for you. So you can see here, I've got a line item for T2013. I can see how many units were scheduled there. I can see how many were scheduled for T2012. And I can see all of the different buckets of time, right? I can see all the way through notes, time records, batch, total units, build, and then ultimately, what have I got remaining? All right, guys, hopping back up here. I know we've got about 4 minutes left and trying to stay on track and on time here. So unformatted, I'm just going to very briefly show you, very, very similar to the service variance report. It is just simply going to be very Excel friendly. Okay, when you run that report, it's gonna basically present it in columns and rows, and it's very useful for exporting to Excel. Utilization report. Let me show you this real quick. Again, this is just sort of another version of the variance report. This is good at looking at just high level. It's also very good for running for multiple clients at a time. Variance, I think of that again as I'm drilling down into the details, trying to get really into the details. This one, the utilization report can be really good at looking at high level, and you certainly could run this for multiple clients at a time. But again, I'm just going to plug in Johnny Cool, unexpired. And then let's just look at the T2021 again. And let's look for the whole off period and run this report just so you get an idea what this one looks like. Again, very similar. We see our total authorized units, scheduled amounts, what's sitting in notes, time records, batched. It's totaling all of these 4 up to give us the 177, plus the build subtracted from our total. And that's where we get our remaining units. All right, another one, last report, the auth versus scheduled report. So this is a great one too. This presents as a percentage. This is a really, really good one for showing you, are we maximizing our units, right? It's kind of one of those, again, you use it or lose it, right? So you want to make sure you're maximizing your authorizations, whatever your clients have been authorized for from MCOs. And this is a great way to track that. So if you haven't seen this one before and you are using schedules and you're plugging in unit maximums, this is what this one looks like. I'm going to run this for a couple of folks. Let's run this for Charlie Brown. And you can always plug in multiple filters here. Again, we're going to pick our friend Johnny Cool. And then let's just look at unexpired. And we're almost finished, guys, I promise. And then let's go ahead and run this one. This will take just a little bit to run, so I'm going to kind of chunk through the numbers. All right. So when I expand this, just kind of give you an idea of what this looks like. This one, again, is very, very Excel friendly. It's really designed to, as you can see here, I can export this to Excel. It's designed for you to be able to sort and filter. So this is showing right away, you know, look, I am super, super underutilized in terms of my scheduled versus off time for these services, for my community networking and my day support. But I am way, way over on the community networking for this H2015. Whatever service code that is, that's not looking good at all. Super underutilized here. And then I've got some NAs, which just means I'm missing some data. I either don't have scheduled events or I don't have unit maximums plugged in. So this is another really good one. It's a good one, again, shows you a percentage of utilization. So a good one to run periodically.